Welcome to the 2026 Robert F. Kennedy Book and Journalism Awards. We will begin shortly. This ceremony and all of the important programs at the Robert and Ethel Kennedy Human Rights Center rely on donations from generous friends. So we would like to express our thanks to Mortimer Zuckerman and the Zuckerman Family Foundation for their gift, which makes this ceremony possible. If you enjoyed this celebration and would like to see more content from Kennedy Human Rights, please consider supporting our efforts.
Scan the QR code on your screen to donate.
Our program will begin shortly.
Hi, everybody. You're here in the right place. Welcome. Thanks for being here. We're glad to have you. We are here for the 2026 Robert Francis Kennedy Awards in Books and Journalism. I'm Michael Beschloss. It's an honor to be with you. As we begin, let's remember the great historical figure, Robert Kennedy, Senator from New York. He was so intently determined to ensure equality, to lift up those living in poverty, to champion civil rights and social justice, and maybe even most important, in this signal year of 2026, to defend basic American democracy. How I wish that Senator Robert Kennedy were alive today. The reporters who covered his presidential campaign in 1968 created these awards the following year to honor journalists who report on the issues that shaped Robert Kennedy's life and his legacy. Today, journalists keep that legacy alive in their work, although oftentimes they have to do it in environments that are extremely difficult. Please take a look.
Are you stupid? Are you a stupid person?
For journalists, this has been a year like no other.
Quiet. Yep, he really did call a female reporter Peggy.
As journalists, especially women, have faced withering attacks from the U.S. president just for asking uncomfortable questions.
What would you say to the survivors who feel like they haven't gotten justice?
You are the worst reporter. No wonder CNN has no ratings because of people like you.
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
I think you are a terrible reporter.
The administration dismantled Voice of America, cut funding for PBS and NPR, and tried to strong-arm journalists to toe the line or lose access.
It's deadline day for media outlets to sign the Pentagon's new restrictive press access rules. It states that reporters cannot solicit or report on any information the Department of Defense does not authorize. News organizations across the board, including CNN, as you might imagine, rejected signing a pledge like that.
For decades, Paul Farhi has written for the Washington Post and Variety, building a career on covering the news media. He says the Trump playbook, combined with mass layoffs, has created a terrible terrain for journalists.
For the last year, it's been devastating. It's a very tough time to be a journalist. To have a job is itself an accomplishment.
Now, before we get to this year's honorees, let's all welcome our guest speaker, Jake Tapper. You all know that Jake is an award-winning CNN anchor. You've all seen him on The Lead with Jake Tapper and his great interview program, State of the Union. Today, Jake has some thoughts he'd like to share with all of us.
Hey everyone, Jake Tapper here, reporting to you from CNN's Washington, D.C. Bureau, where I'm getting ready to anchor my weekday show, The Lead. It is such an honor to say hello to you all, even if virtually. Thank you so much to Carrie Kennedy for thinking of me, and to the volunteer judges who put so much time and care and effort into this awards program. Most importantly, though, I want to say thank you to each and every honoree for choosing this path. It is not always an easy one, especially these days, but I still believe it can be a noble one. It's always nice to be recognized with an award, especially one as meaningful as this one, to have a physical token of appreciation for our work, a reminder perhaps to our skeptical parents who maybe wanted us to be doctors or lawyers, or maybe for the young folks, coders. Any serious journalist will agree we don't do it for the awards or the titles. We don't do it for the clicks or the likes or just to be on TV. We do it because when journalism is at its best, our democracy depends upon it. And the Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Awards recognize something essential about our chosen profession, that journalism at its best It's not about celebrity or clicks or rage bait. It is about bearing witness and documenting history and giving voice to the voiceless. It is about being relentless and trying to make sure the story is right and accurate and fair. It's about informing the public with the facts so that they can make their own mind up about important issues, and doing it with compassion, especially when the truth is difficult to bear. You know, you go to work every day hoping you have courage, hoping you can report without fear or favor. We set out to hold our leaders accountable, even when it ruffles feathers, even when it might risk your own safety. And I'll just add, if you're pissing someone off, you're probably doing something right. Now, the business of the news media has changed a lot since the days of Cronkite and Murrow, who delivered the news to a singular captivated audience. The news industry has changed a lot even since I began in this business. The news industry is stretched and fragmented, trust is fragile, and it attempts to cross a polarized nation. Too many people just want the news to fit their worldview, their preconceived narratives. And there are far too many personalities and far too many platforms that are glad to deliver that because it makes economic sense. It's a business decision. And even worse, a lot of people in our business are rewarded for mudslinging and trafficking in disinformation and being cruel and being mean. But even as things change and the times get tough, the ethos of what we do, it's always been the same. And perhaps it's never been more important and simultaneously more difficult. This mission feels especially connected to the legacy of Robert F. Kennedy, who challenged systems of inequality and injustice and believed deeply in our shared humanity. And I love that the Robert and Ethel Kennedy Center for Human Rights have chosen to spotlight this particular quote from Bob Kennedy. So I think it's an appropriate way to close. Quote, and I will spare you my RFK imitation, but what we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another and a feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country, unquote. My deepest congratulations to the honorees. Keep up the good work.
Now we have the honor to hear from that great champion of human rights and the First Amendment, my dear friend, the president of Kennedy Human Rights, Carrie Kennedy.
Thank you, Michael, and really thank you for all you do for Kennedy Human Rights and for our greater world. I'd also like to thank all of you volunteer judges who give of your time and energy to make these awards possible. A special huge thanks to Peggy, Engel, and the goddess Linda Laney and Christina Taylor, all of our teams at Kennedy Human Rights and Tailor-Made Experience for their work on today's ceremony. But most especially thanks to our audience. Your presence today sends a message. Journalism still matters. Recording history still matters. Journalists today are facing unprecedented attacks. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, a record 129 journalists and media workers were killed worldwide last year. That's more people than any other year since CPJ began collecting data in 1992. Reporting from the front lines of Gaza, Sudan, Iran, Ukraine, and beyond, journalists are putting their lives on the line to bring us the news. When notorious drug lord El Mencho was killed, journalists in Mexico worked day and night to share crucial on-the-ground updates, even as violence broke out across the country. When U.S. forces seized Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, reporters were there to follow the story amid the instability of the regime. But the reporters, writers, photographers, and videographers whose work is reflected in today's awards aren't only facing threats overseas, they're facing retaliation from the United States government. Time and again, President Trump has treated journalists like the enemy and the First Amendment like a suggestion. He bullies and belittles journalists for doing their jobs, labeling them as enemies of the state and dismissing their coverage as fake news. His administration has raided reporters' homes, tried to ban reporters from the Pentagon, and thrown journalists in ICE jails. President Trump has stripped funding from public broadcasters. He's insulted female reporters from Bloomberg, CNN, and the New York Times, making misogynistic comments about their appearance and intelligence. He's used his power at the FCC to strong-arm networks into delaying news coverage or firing anchors. President Trump's attacks have been relentless, but they have not stopped at journalists. When ICE agents gunned down Renee Good and Alex Pretty on the streets of Minneapolis, local reporters feared tear gas and riot gear to report the truth. They shared meticulously reported stories and photos revealing scenes that looked more like a war zone than a Midwestern city. Their coverage rallied people across the country to push back against ICE overreach. And it's not just reporters who are taking a stand. Authors and historians are working tirelessly to ensure that these pivotal moments are incorporated into our collective archive. While the president and his cronies try to erase or distort American history from our textbooks, our culture, and our public places, authors, writers, and others take on the task of permanently recording and preserving our history. As someone who has been on the front lines of fighting against authoritarian regimes around the world for over 40 years, I know that the free press is always one of the first targets. When leaders seek to consolidate power, they start by questioning and then criminalizing dissenting voices. There has never been a more dangerous time in recent history to be a journalist, whether that's at home or abroad. But there has also never been more need for hope. I was recently listening to an interview with one of our clients, a freelance journalist named Umu Thraronka, who is from Sierra Leone. Kennedy Human Rights began working with Umu in 2025 after she was subjected to years of sexual harassment and violence at her workplace, a state-owned media broadcaster. She was threatened, propositioned by her bosses, passed over for promotions, and ultimately fired just for posting a social media video that was critical of the government. But in this interview, Uma talked about why she became a journalist in the first place. She talked about the importance of speaking truth to power and telling stories that would otherwise go untold. She said she became a journalist to help build a better nation. Uma's bravery, and the bravery of all reporters who commit to this work despite increasing opposition, is why we are here. Journalists are foundational to democracy, and they are foundational to our future. We can't build a better system if we don't know what's broken. We can't act if we are not aware. Journalists around the world and across this country face physical threats, political retaliation, and job instability to bring us the truth. They report on the reality of the world so that we can summon the courage to change it. To the reporters, the photographers, the videographers, the editors, and the authors whose work is represented here, thank you. Thank you for your willingness to see the world as it is and your refusal to leave it there. We are grateful for your commitment, and we're honored to celebrate you today. Now, let's hear from Peggy Engel.
Thank you, Carrie. In Senator Robert Kennedy's lifetime, he addressed issues like poverty and racial inequality, and he was an outspoken critic of the Vietnam War. During this ceremony, we will salute courageous journalists who are capturing his spirit in their work. Sometimes the words of the late senator haunt us because they are just as relevant today as they were in 1968. During his presidential campaign, he called out the growing divisions in the country. Then he spoke of people living in the hidden places whose names and faces are completely unknown. 4-time Pulitzer Prize-winning photojournalist Carol Kennedy went in search of these people. She found them getting brutalized in, of all places, America's halls of justice. Here is her winning entry: ICE, Broken Families.
These are the varied faces of the soul-crushing mass deportation effort by the Trump administration. The scene is the Jacob Javits Federal Building in New York. Carol Kennedy camped out here for 6 months with her camera to document a story taking place in the shadows. Masked ICE agents stand outside courtrooms, in many cases bored, until they pounce. The most gut-wrenching scenes are those of family separations. Anguished young girls cling to their father, Luis, an immigrant from Ecuador. The children are caught in the crossfire. One woman pleads with ICE agents, "Take me, not him. They will kill him," as her husband is whisked away to be deported to Ecuador. Photojournalists are society's eyes, and federal agents know it, so they violently throw some to the floor. Kennedy is here to capture that as well. One is hurt so badly, they are taken to the hospital by the EMS. Kennedy has talked about how this project impacted her, saying photojournalism is the practice of visual empathy, but that empathy is a blessing and a curse. It allows us to create images that resonate, but our own heart breaks harder. This is the 4th time Kennedy has won the RFK Award. She knows the heartbreak of the children. Kennedy's father died when she was only 6, so she understands the eternal hole the loss of a parent leaves in children. She admits, as a journalist, you can never walk in another's shoes, but you can walk beside them with a shared humanity. Kennedy did just that for 6 months, telling the story of these invisible to most, caught in the shadows of despair. The 2026 winner of the Domestic Photography Award is ICE Broken Families. Congratulations to Carol Kennedy for her work for Zuma Press.
In most cases, journalists are dispatched to spot news stories. It's rare when the news story actually comes to them, but that's exactly what happened with our international photography winner. He was in a cafe just feet away from an explosion. The pictures he captured following the blast are part of his winning entry: the war in Gaza.
An Israeli airstrike hit a Thai restaurant on May 7, 2025. Sahir Ahura was drinking coffee across the street and jumped into action. In a matter of moments, the photojournalist caught the panicked looks on the faces of survivors. Local authorities say 33 were killed and the strike wounded 155. Sadly, war and death are part of his beat. This is the instant the Israeli military bombed the Mustafa Tower, and he was able to record the moment for history with his camera. Amid the carnage, there is chaos and the fight to survive. Every morning during the war, Gazans struggled to acquire what they needed to stay alive for another day. Sahir also caught moments of humanity, a family sitting down to break fast after Ramadan. Only their home is a shell of what it once was, overlooking the ruins that at one time was their bustling neighborhood. There's a makeshift movie theater erected to captivate children as they watch the Pixar animated film Up. It's a break from a life that looks more like this: a child eating a bag of chips, but as the shot widens, you can see he's beside a bombed-out truck hit by an Israeli military strike. The 2026 winner of the International Photography Award is The War in Gaza. Congratulations to Sahir Ahura for his work at the New York Times.
Our international television winning entry unearths a secret in a small Polish town. The chilling documentary, Among Neighbors, is the story of people from two different faiths who lived next to one another, peacefully for centuries. Then things turned deadly. Take a look.
Polish lawmakers want to enforce their view of history.
Any suggestion that Poland was complicit in the Holocaust could land offenders in jail under a new law.
The law criminalizes a broad range of speech, from blatant misinformation to uncomfortable historical facts.
Poles were complicit in atrocities during World War II. This is just fact. This is just history. Why are you shutting down any free speech about this?
No. We're not shutting the free speech.
This law will protect the Polish nation and the Polish people from false accusations.
I'm a survivor of the Holocaust. And to say that Polish people didn't help the Germans, didn't hate, and didn't kill Jewish people, it's against the truth.
With this new law on the books as context, the documentary Among Neighbors begins, telling the uncomfortable story of a small Polish town where neighbors weren't just complicit with Nazis during the war, they took part in killing Jews after the war ended. It's a chilling secret buried here for decades. With the help of hand-drawn animation, the story comes to life. 6 months after the Second World War ended, townspeople murdered Holocaust survivors. The haunting mystery is too much for Pelagia Radecka, an eyewitness who breaks her silence.
Ile widziałam, co robili. Ile widziałam, jak zabijali.
Filmmakers bring her together with the surviving family member who has spent his life trying to find answers to who killed his loved ones and why.
You met my mother and my father before they were murdered by those criminals.
Pamiętam.
My parents, my uncle, were murdered in September 1945. 6 months already after the war.
Among Neighbors took a decade to make. It's a blend of investigative reporting and historical reckoning. It's the story of powerful forces trying desperately to rewrite or forget history. But as Poland grapples with its painful past, aging residents come forward to show that real patriotism and bravery are displayed when you embrace the truth, no matter how painful. The 2026 winner of the International Television Award is Among Neighbors. Congratulations to Yoav Potash and Anita Friedman for their work at Headfirst Arts and Media.
What does it take to be a great editorial cartoonist? You need to be visual and imaginative. It's also important to layer humor into your work to provide a provocative viewpoint on politics and policies. Beth Wolfensberger, singer of the Boston Globe, shows us how it's done in this year's winning entry.
Beth Wolfensberger Singer's work is equal parts sardonic and saucy. It's fun and informative. She enjoys poking at the powerful. She has Shakespeare-inspired fashion for the vice president, seen here in puffy pants. Here's Kristi Noem, and then there's Stephen Miller. She assigns images to words to describe what it's like to live in an age of Trump. There's repulsed, hopeless, downhearted, the list goes on. When Starbucks decided to close stores and lay off 900 workers, she used her editorial cartoons to call out economic inequalities with a latte art design layout. It's a great way to illustrate the CEO's outrageous salary at $96 million, while demonstrating how little the baristas are making. The average pay is just shy of $15,000. This series of cartoons is fun, informative, and most of all, it's eye-opening. The 2026 winner of the Cartoon Award is Beth Wolfensberger Singer for her work at the Boston Globe.
Our college journalism winners come from the University of Nebraska. Through their work, we see the psychological impact of solitary confinement. The winning entry, Nebraska Behind Bars, is an examination of a mental health crisis in the state's prison system.
David Gonzalez is hoping to reel in a fish. This is a solitary, serene experience that runs counter to his time behind bars, when solitary meant solitary confinement.
I had a toilet, a sink, a concrete bed, and I had a space about that big where I had 4 steps. 2, 3, 4, and I would just turn and just walk 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's a little window right here where you look and there's another wall that you're looking at. So this was my cell that I lived in forever, and God gave me a walk-in closet bigger than my cell that I lived in, in solitary confinement for 15 years.
This long-form documentary explores the mental health crisis gripping Nebraska's prisons. Inmates need help, but mental health professionals are in short supply.
Of the 73 behavioral health practitioner positions, there are 42 vacancies. Of the 16 psychologist positions, there are 12 vacancies. Also, of the 3 psychiatrist positions, there is only 1 chief part-time psychiatrist working.
The documentary, Nebraska Behind Bars, underscores the urgent need for proper mental health support. Former inmates like David Gonzalez never received the help he desperately needed.
Your mind cannibalizes itself. You feel like you're dead. Every single day feels like an eternity.
The 2026 winner of the College Award is Nebraska Behind Bars. Congratulations to the Depth Report team for their work at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln College of Journalism and Mass Communications.
We also salute high school journalists in Iowa City as they look at how the state education department is targeting their school. A new rating system has resulted in unfair rankings. Take a look.
There's a bullseye over Iowa City High School. Student journalists do a deep dive into a rating system by the state that targeted Iowa City High School, moving its ranking from commendable to needs improvement. That's despite the fact that U.S. News & World Report still ranks the high school as one of the top in the state. The State Department of Education's complicated rankings downgraded the school because of subgroups, like students with disabilities and English language learners. Affluent rural schools with more white students and smaller subgroups seem to fare better with the new rankings. The 2026 winner of the High School Award is targeted. New evaluation system drops ratings. Congratulations to student journalists Lily Rantanen and Ty Caputo for their work for the Little Hawk, the student newspaper at Iowa City High School.
Once again, this year we recognize reporting on incarceration and criminalization. It's a difficult story to tell because so much of it goes on behind bars. This sparked a comprehensive investigation that became an HBO documentary. Here's a look at the Alabama solution.
A production crew was at this Alabama prison filming this revival meeting when inmates began whispering that terrible things were happening here, hidden away from society.
They beat me so bad, they literally defecated on myself.
Last Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday was a stabbing every day that have not been reported.
Guards noticed the interaction and intervened.
It's the prison and walking up by yourself, talking to them, inmates by yourself up there. We're finished. Our filming is over.
The filming was over, but the investigation was just beginning. It took 6 years of digging to understand the reality of what was happening behind the walls of the nation's deadliest prison system.
A Justice Department investigation found conditions throughout the entire Alabama prison system are unconstitutional.
Alarming new report from the Justice Department details horrifying conditions and regular occurrences of murder and rape.
Telling the story wasn't easy. Filmmakers relied on videos shot on contraband cell phones. What they gathered helped to expose a shocking story of brutality, corruption, and modern-day slave labor.
We have been thrown into a slave camp
where we're being told you're going to work for us for free until you die.
The Alabama solution is raw, shocking, and an urgent call for action. In Alabama, the portrait is one of brutality and extreme cruelty. Inmates finally say they've had enough and take action.
Alabama inmates are on strike. It is affecting every major prison facility in the state. The unprecedented system-wide worker stoppage sending a message to lawmakers.
We have officially shut down the impossible, as they say. Let me show you the energy of the dark. Unity. Real unity. Black, white, Mexican, everybody.
The strike ends, but nothing changes. And Alabama moves forward with more prison construction.
The cost of a new Alabama prison is up to $1 billion. You're literally robbing our children to pay for these new prisons.
Are you still supporting the $100 million going to the prisons from the education fund?
Sure.
The 2026 winner in the Reporting on Incarceration and Criminalization category is the Alabama Solution. Congratulations to Andrew Jarecki and Charlotte Kaufman for their work at the Alabama Film Project.
The numbers are huge. Up to 95% of teens use social media. Have you ever given much thought to how this is impacting kids? Our domestic television winners did. They examined the tension between corporate profits and child safety in Can't Look Away, the case against social media. Take a look.
The statistics are staggering. The advertising dollars aimed at youngsters is estimated at $11 billion. This powerful documentary shows social media platforms swimming in profits as parents are left to swim in a sea of tears.
First, I'd like to start by thanking all the families that are here today, all the parents who are here because of a child they have lost.
Cameras are on Capitol Hill as tech companies are confronted.
Mr. Zuckerberg, you and the companies before us have blood on your hands. You have a product. You have a product that's killing people.
There are countless examples of children dying because of their engagement with social media. Jordan DeMay had everything going for him. Star athlete, prom king. But one night he was deceived and engaged with a hacked account. He shared explicit photos, and when he was extorted for money he didn't have, he took his own life.
Social media provided a place for these people using this hacked account to contact Jordan and basically gave them a safe space to commit a crime.
The film also shows how parents are blaming social media platforms for fueling the fentanyl crisis.
How many more children have to die because Snapchat chooses profits over safety?
Snap is useful when you don't want people to see what you're doing. So you see here, chats delete immediately, or I can change that to 24 hours from now, delete all that conversation, right? This is what Snap Map looks like. But you can see, like, let's say I'm a dealer, I can easily locate you and, hey, I'm gonna be at the park around the corner, you can come meet me here. Yeah, it's like platform was built for that.
I found my son's lifeless body due to fentanyl poisoning. They have the best distribution system in the world, and nobody has stopped them.
This film is also a David and Goliath story as we meet Matthew Bergman.
Representing people like these parents is very motivating and gives us purpose for doing it. I think this is a fight I've been training for 30 years.
The 2026 winner of the Domestic Television Award is Can't Look Away, the case against social media. Congratulations to Matthew O'Neill, Perry Peltz, Olivia Carville, and Kristen Powers for their work for Bloomberg Originals.
The Eaton fire was catastrophic, incinerating thousands of homes and killing 19 people in Southern California. At first glance, it looked like a natural disaster. but a team at the New York Times investigated, and the result is found in their impressive body of work, Smoke Trail.
The New York Times sweeping investigation shows suffering endured following the catastrophic Eaton fire because of failures by a powerful utility and insurance companies. It brought accountability, forcing a utility to acknowledge its role in the disaster and to compensate victims. But the most jarring part of this series focuses on what some might consider the lucky ones. At first blush, this family looks like one, but they are far from blessed and relieved because their home is still standing. That's because the New York Times investigation shows the fire unleashed toxins and carcinogens into the air that made their way into vents and doorways of some homes that survived. Pictures tell the story. The Times investigation reviewed toxicology reports on 56 homes. The Morrow family were told by their insurance company that removal of insulation in the attic and a deep cleaning should do the trick. But they felt something was off and they hired an expert team. Their findings? Neurotoxins and carcinogens were present. The Morrows weren't alone. Another homeowner had their vehicle tested, and there were traces of cyanide in this child car seat. The Van Ness family was assured by their insurance company that it was safe to return home, but carcinogens and neurotoxins are in their home and in their bodies. Lead levels near the kitchen refrigerator were astronomical. Despite constant efforts at cleaning, lead levels in the dining area are still 7 times above the federal limit. Analysis of hair samples from one child found 9 chemicals present, some that can damage kidneys, and one that can hamper brain development. Parents grapple with findings like these while still continuing to fight with their insurance companies. The 2026 winner of the Domestic Print Award is Smoke Trail. Congratulations to the team of Blackie Migliozzi, Rukmini Kalamachi, Ivan Penn, Danny Hakim, and KK Rebecca Lai for their work for the New York Times.
Now it's my pleasure to introduce my good friend and 2-time Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist, John Siegenthaler.
Thanks, Peggy. I'm always honored to take part in these awards because these prizes are a part of my family's DNA. I have the pleasure of being a judge, and in recent years of awarding the Siegenthaler Prize. It's named in honor of my father. He was a reporter, an editor, and publisher who used to say that ink ran through his veins. He was a fearless journalist and fierce defender of the First Amendment. For years, my father was devoted to these awards and co-chaired the RFK Book Prize Committee. He wasn't always a journalist. As a young man, he was a trusted aide to Attorney General Robert Kennedy. He was also a lifelong champion of civil rights. While trying to protect the Freedom Riders in Montgomery, Alabama in 1961, he was savagely beaten by an angry white mob. This award is meant to recognize reporting under difficult circumstances that requires courage and commitment. And the winner this year is our international print winning team from the New York Times. There's a famous quote, "Numbers are never numbers. There's always a story behind them." Our international print winners found that story. The team saw that more than 100 East African domestic workers had died in Saudi Arabia in the past 2 years. They wondered, how could women hired to clean homes or care for children end up dying at such an alarming rate? Here's a look at the deadly trade in female Kenyan workers.
It's a crowded classroom. These women study Arabic and practical skills. Women dream of the money they'll make in their new jobs in Saudi Arabia. Recruiters assure them 2 years of work overseas will mean they can buy a house and educate their children. But many of these women interviewed by the New York Times are abused and will never be paid. Some return home in coffins. The New York Times investigation also showed that powerful forces in Saudi Arabia, Uganda, and Kenya are major investors and agencies that place domestic workers in these dangerous and sometimes deadly positions. One Kenyan lawyer who represents workers describes it this way: it's a cycle of abuse that no one is addressing. The 2026 winner of the John Siegenthaler Prize for Courage in Journalism is also the winner of the 2026 International Print Award for the deadly trade in female Kenyan workers. Congratulations to Amda Latif Dahur, and Justin Scheck for their work for the New York Times.
Impressive work, and the bravery displayed is worthy of the 2026 John Siegenthaler Courage in Journalism Award. Now back to Peggy to announce this year's grand prize winner.
Thank you, John. Before I announce the grand prize winner, I want to thank all of our judges for their contributions. I also would like to thank the distinguished journalists who serve on the Journalism Awards Committee. They are John Siegenthaler, Roberta Baskin, and Jennifer 8 Lee, Kimberly Adams, Raphael Lorient, and Terrence Samuel. This year's grand prize winner is also the Radio Podcast Award winner, the Outlaw Ocean Project, stitching together everything from data collection to postings on China's version of TikTok. They tell the story of abused workers from North Korea working in Chinese factories. Here's a sampling.
This is how episode 8 of season 2 of the Outlaw Ocean podcast begins, with audio from a Donggong Jinwei Foodstuff Company party in a coastal city in northeast China. It's a seafood processing company, and workers are singing. But if you listen closely, and you have a discerning ear, you'll know the songs are being sung in Korean. The podcast shows that forced North Korean workers are behind the success of the company. The UN Security Council banned these so-called labor transfers, but the 30-minute episode narrated by Ian Urbina shows it's still going on. The Outlaw Ocean Project podcast connects the dots from forced labor to a long supply chain that eventually leads to all of us.
We're on the other side of the world, at the other end of this insanely long supply chain. We're the ones enjoying these low prices. But I think the thing to remember here is that there are costs being paid by the people doing the work, the ones producing the seafood. Bottom line, the real cost isn't what you see on the price tag.
The 2026 Grand Prize winner is also the recipient of the Radio and Podcast Award, The Untold Plight of North Korean Workers. Congratulations to the staff of the Outlaw Ocean Project and Ian Urbina for their work for the Outlaw Ocean Podcast. Now, let's hear from Ian.
We're a tiny team, 11 people on staff, based in D.C. We focus on human rights and environmental crimes at sea around the world. And this story, the one for which this year's honor is bestowed, is one focused on a sort of invisible demographic of workers, namely North Korean, mostly women, working in factories in China. I sort of feel a certain kinship with the RFK Awards and the spirit that they embody. And someone floated for me a speech that RFK gave in 1968 at the University of Kansas as he was running for president, in which he talked about, kind of invisible people. In this case, he was referring to abjectly poor people in Mississippi that he had encountered in Appalachia. In his speech, he was making the point that it was a scandal, one that we should fix for such poverty and desperation to exist in a country as rich as the United States. That message couldn't be more true now than it was in 1968. And the spirit of trying to focus on, not just refuse to forget those left behind demographics, and by attention focusing on them, fixing the problem that creates their situation, is one that I think inspires the work we do at the Outlaw Ocean Project in looking at another demographic of invisible workers. Thank you to the RFK Awards for helping us do this work and supporting us. It's such a big morale boost to my team. So thank you very much.
Now, here is the chair of the Robert Kennedy Book Award, Michael Beschloss, to announce this year's book winner.
Thank you so much, Peggy. Wonderful choices. We are so grateful. Before I introduce our book award winner, I'd like to honor the late Arthur Schlesinger Jr., who wrote the magnificent biography, Robert Kennedy and His Times, published in 1978. Arthur used proceeds from the sale of that book to found our book award. He wanted to honor books and authors who shared convictions and ideals with Senator Robert Kennedy. Before I announce our winner, I'd like to thank my fellow judges, author and historian Annette Gordon-Reed, law professor and author Randall Kennedy, and American historian and writer Ted Widmer. And now it's time for this year's Book Award winner. The winner of the 2026 Robert Francis Kennedy Book Award is Marie Gottschalk, author of Crime and No Punishment: Wealth, Power, and Violence in America. In that book, she explores the dynamics at play in our judicial system. She expands the definition of violence to include corporate, state, and institutional violence. The result, she says, is systemic violence, high incarceration rates, and a fragile democracy. Now let's have the honor of hearing from our winner, Marie Gottschalk.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the committee, to the center, and especially to Carrie Kennedy, who's done so much to uphold the human rights legacy of her parents. In one of his first interviews as Attorney General, Robert Kennedy said, "Too much power scares me." My book is about power, about how the growing concentration of economic, political, and military power has fostered violence in the United States. This includes not just interpersonal violence, but also state, economic, and political violence. This concentration of power has contributed to unprecedented declines in life expectancy and the quality of life, as more people are losing their health care, their homes, their jobs, and their savings. Rising corporate impunity, the financialization of the economy, militarized policing, the burgeoning carceral state, the opioid crisis, the Great Recession, and blowback from the forever wars and the gigantic military budget have fostered violence in America. The rise of Donald Trump is incomprehensible without a deeper understanding of how these developments have delegitimized and destabilized the political and economic system since the 1970s. The U.S. failure to protect its people from all these harms has increased the brittleness of democracy in America. It has raised the prospect of a bleak, undemocratic future as violence begets more violence. But if we are to truly honor Robert Kennedy's legacy and why he inspires so many people from so many walks of life, we need to acknowledge how he employed us to lean into the light. His speeches and writings, and indeed his life, were filled with lightness and darkness. As an avid reader of poetry, he often turned to Tennyson's Ulysses at key moments. One of Robert Kennedy's favorite lines was, "Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world." So even though my book can be bleak at times, I think I end on a note that it's not too late to seek a newer world. Thank you so much for this award and helping us to seek a newer world.
Thank you so much, Marie. Terrific book. Congratulations. Again, our book award winner is Crime and No Punishment: Wealth, Power, and Violence in America by Marie Gottschalk, published by Princeton University Press. This concludes the 2026 Robert Francis Kennedy Book and Journalism Awards. Our congratulations to all of our wonderful winners. Thanks to all of you for watching.
Thank you for watching the 2026 Robert F. Kennedy Book and Journalism Awards. This ceremony and all of the important programs at the Robert and Ethel Kennedy Human Rights Center rely on donations from generous friends. So once again, we would like to express our thanks to Mort Zuckerman and the Zuckerman Family Foundation for their gift, which makes this ceremony possible. If you enjoyed this celebration and would like to see more content from Kennedy Human Rights, please consider supporting our efforts.
Scan the QR code on your screen
to donate. Again, thanks so much for watching.